Welcome to John's Tarot. This isn't fortune telling, it isn't prediction, and it isn't about escaping the ordinary. This is a space where we slow down long enough to notice structure in our lives, in our history, and in ourselves. The symbols don't tell us what to do, they give us a place to land for meeting. And here we explore the maps. Tarot, the I Ching, the runes, not as authorities, but as mirrors. What emerges is already there. We're just learning to see it more clearly. If you're walking your own path of integration, if you're caring less than you used to, or if you're simply curious about how structure becomes alive, you're in the right place. Let's begin. So welcome to John's Tarot for this week. I realize I'm running a little late, but I've had some medical appointments and returning back to work after a wonderful vacation. We took a cruise to the Caribbean, and it was just great. From this point forward, I am no longer involved with. I'm no longer working on the Soul Awakening series. That piece of work exists. But while I was in the Soul Awakening series, I want to talk a little bit about what happened to me. And it was quite an interesting experience because what happened to me was I had entered into a symbolic field, a creative and symbolic field. It was a little bit like being in a spiritual experience for 10 weeks. But it was intense. It took a lot out of me. And that's what the Soul Awakening series is. It is a story. An experience taken from inside a symbolic and archetypal field. I didn't even know such things existed until I came out of it. Now I'm feeling much more rested now. I got to give my body a chance to recover. So part of that Soul Awakening series is actually a documentary of being inside the type of field. One of the things that came out of the experience is this idea of fields. Systems and fields. And I'm going to explain a little bit about that today. I've prepared a little presentation. Systems management, field notes from the inside. Over the last few days, I've been learning something. Not from books, not from theory, not because I went looking for it. I was simply living my life and patterns started to reveal themselves. What I want to share today is an instruction. It's not a framework to apply to other people. It's not a belief system. It's observation. Field notes, really, from inside lived experience. If you spent time inside addiction, family dysfunction, institutions, or highly polarized environments, some of this may feel familiar. If it doesn't, that's okay. This isn't meant to convince anyone. Systems and fields. One of the most useful distinctions I've been working with is the difference between systems and fields. A system is a self-maintaining structure. Families are systems. Institutions are systems. Political movements are systems. Recovery programs are systems. Workplaces are systems. Systems don't exist primarily to serve truth or well-being. They exist to preserve coherence. And the thing I found out is systems can exist and become autopoietic in that they self-generate, protect themselves, and spread. And they mimic life. I talked about autopoiesis before. The emotional tone, the sense of safety or threat, what's allowed to be said, what must not be questioned, how quickly things escalate. Systems organize behavior. Fields organize experience. That distinction turned out to matter a lot. Adaptive and maladaptive systems. Some systems are adaptive. They can flex. They tolerate ambiguity. They allow people to come and go. Other systems are maladaptive. They harden. They punish ambiguity. They reward escalation. They resist disengagement. And that's the kind of family system I came out of, was a maladaptive family system. Maladaptive systems generate dysregulated fields. In a dysregulated field, reactivity replaces choice. Certainty replaces curiosity. Narrative replaces perception. You can see these fields in addiction, in family gossip systems, in online outrage, in rigid institutions, and in polarized politics. What really struck me was how quickly these fields can move through a human being. There's this thing called field induction. Here's part of that surprised me the most. Systems don't control people directly. They don't need to. They induce fields. When someone enters a field generated by a system, their nervous system synchronizes automatically. Language narrows, emotion intensifies, behavior becomes predictable, logic stops working. This isn't pathological. It isn't possession. It isn't moral failure. It's mammalian. Under those conditions, a person becomes a local expression of system coherence. They're not acting against you. They're acting for the system, often without realizing it. Perturbation and brittleness. I also learned that you don't need a major confrontation to reveal a system. Sometimes a very small perturbation, a boundary, a pause, a refusal to engage is enough. A perturbation, sometimes you do that on the internet. If you poke at a MAGA person and there's an immediate response, that's a perturbation. And the immediate response is a system response. And that's how I initially tested it out. If the response is fast, disproportionate, and escalatory, that tells you something. And that's what happened to me. It tells you the system is brittle. Strong systems don't panic. Brittle ones do. Escalation isn't strength. It's a repair attempt. And here we come back to the concept of autopoiesis. It's a system repair attempt. Real-time system capture. The most important thing I learned wasn't theoretical. It was reorganizing system capture in real time. There are signs: sudden speed, emotional certainty, collapse of nuance, explanation making things worse. Once a capture is active, logic fails, education fails, correction fails. And how many times have you tried to argue with a MAGA person? Logic fails, education fails, correction fails. And I've seen this happen in my own family in regards to maladaptive systems. Once the system had captured a family member, I realized there's no use arguing anymore. At that point, trying harder doesn't help. Withdrawal as an active strategy. The only thing that works at that moment is withdrawal. Not avoidance, not silence, not punishment. Withdrawal is the denial of energy to a dysregulated field. When you stop feeding the field, it decays. Not instantly, but reliably. Time and distance do what argument can never do. I watched this happen in real time, and I watched repair occur without force. That was very instructive for me. And then we do things like entering and exiting roles in regards to systems. At the same time, I learned that not all systems are to be avoided. Sometimes the healthy move is to enter a system role deliberately, as a nurse, a worker, a stabilizer, and then exit it cleanly. The key distinction is this: role is not identity. When you can move in and out without being owned, you stay coherent. Integration with older lineages. What surprised me least was how familiar all of this felt. I've encountered these ideas before through sobriety, through the Tao, through the I Ching, through years of lived experience. Those traditions were never about control. They were about alignment. The Tao doesn't ask us to fix systems. It asks us to see clearly and stop forcing. If I had to distill everything I learned into one line, it would be this: notice capture. Stop feeding it. Let time and alignment do the work. Why this isn't for everyone. One thing became very clear. This isn't something you can really explain to people who haven't lived it. Without the experience of exiting a system and not immediately replacing it, the language doesn't land. When I try to explain it to people, I just get this blank look because they do not have the language to understand what I'm talking about. So it can sound very abstract or strange or threatening. And it's not a failure, it's just how learning works. This understanding is state-based, not conceptual. For me, the last few days weren't about acquiring knowledge. Now, the last few weeks of my exit of the field, of the symbolic field, they were about refining how I move through the world, recognizing capture earlier, withdrawing sooner, entering the roles more cleanly, letting the system be what they are without being governed by them. Nothing dramatic changed, but everything feels a little less heavy. And that, I've learned, makes all the difference. So the difference for me has been I intentionally fill roles created by the system. I intentionally enter fields, and I intentionally exit fields. But I am aware of what I'm doing and aware of where I'm expending my energy. And that is what I learned about systems and fields. And I've seen it happen here in my family, and I've seen it happen in the hospital, and I've seen it happen on the internet, or else I wouldn't believe it. I tested it out in 3 different areas, and in all 3 areas, it came out. Try a little perturbation with a MAGA online and see if the system doesn't respond immediately. And the way to deal with these people in the future is a very simple logic. For one thing, you just want to test to see if the system responds, and then you back away, and then you don't respond to them anymore. If you want to create a little crack in the system, a little crack in that system, what you do is what I've done, and I only do it occasionally because if you do it too often, the system will adapt to it. But my logic was what I've done is you tell them, oh, this must be terribly tiring for you. I could see where you're putting more energy in than pulling energy out. And I can understand that. And it's okay if you back away. If you take a little rest, it's all right. And I leave it at that. And then I back out and walk away. That just throws them completely off balance. So what I'm trying to do is coax them out of the system, but I'm not trying to put energy into that maladaptive system. Anyway, that's my little explanation on systems. I think next week I got a little bit more to do on systems. I hope you found this interesting. Let's do a little tarot reading for today. This whole systems theory has been really just wild for me because it is a autopoietic system that exists in life adjacent to me that I wasn't even aware of my whole life until I experimented with it. And this podcast today was a little introductory to that. And these systems, some systems are good, some systems are maladaptive. And some of these maladaptive systems could actually be passed down multi-generationally. And that's what I'm going to talk about next week. Today I'm going to do a little tarot reading. My ability to read tarot is a gift, an expression of divine love. And I'm here to share it with you in that same spirit. So, how can we enter and exit systems and fulfill roles, but retain our independence? And that's the whole point. Systems are going to exist. They've always existed. They've existed as long as mankind has existed. But we don't know it. We don't even know it when we're entered or when we're captured by them, or when we see our family members captured by them. I saw a family member get captured by a system on the internet. It pulled a family member in, and they became reactive, and there was nothing I could do. There's no logic I could tell them. I just had to back away and wait for things to cool off. And you'll see this in your life if you start experimenting with this. So how do we enter and exit systems clearly and cleanly? How do we enter and exit systems clearly and cleanly? I got myself a new deck of cards after I finished the Soul Awaken series, and I'm using a new card today. They're beautiful black and gold tarot cards. How do we enter and exit system rules cleanly and carefully? That is my question. I'll shuffle the deck a little bit. This is just going to be a real simple reading, 3 cards, and I'll throw some runes on it too. See what we get. How do we enter and exit system fields cleanly and carefully? Cut the deck. And my first card is the 9 of Pentacles. My second card, that's interesting, the 8 of Cups. And my third card is the Ace of Swords. Very interesting. Let me get some runes to put on this. All right, let's throw some runes on this. My first rune, Odin, please help guide this reading. For the 9 of Pentacles is Berkana for the 9 of Pentacles. My second rune for the 7 of Cups is Iwaz. And my third rune for the Ace of Swords is Orthelia. Very interesting, very revealing. I'm always amazed when I do runes in combination with tarot, how revealing it is. So the first card is the 9 of Pentacles with Berkana underneath it, and that represents the systems itself. It's also known as the Grace card, the 9 of Pentacles. It exists, these systems exist gracefully, multi-generationally. They've built themselves up, they've built defenses, and they become part of our lives, our family lives. Berkana, they become like things that sustain us, that nurture us, and we don't even know it. That's how the system exists, as the 9 of Pentacles and Berkana. And I asked about how do we enter and exit these fields cleanly and carefully, and I came up with the 8 of Cups. 8 of Cups, you see all these cups standing forward, and you see a guy walking away with a walking stick, and you see the moon in the background. And that's how we do it. Sometimes when you see a maladaptive field, no matter what, you need to just retreat and walk away. And then the rune is called Iwaz. Iwaz has to do with proper movement, has to do with material and spiritual advancement, has to do with controlled change. It is the rune of the horse, the noble beast. You need to just walk away nobly with your dignity intact and don't engage with the maladaptive field. And there are a lot of maladaptive fields out there. Now, there are adaptive fields. There are healthy families. That's what I'm kind of focused on now, is how to make my family an adaptive field, a healthy place for individual family members. And I've separated myself from the maladaptive field of my birth, and that happened a long time ago. It was just with the conclusion of the Soul Awakening series that I've had a lot of clarity on that issue. My final card is the Ace of Swords. You know the things I've been telling you today about fields and systems? It's the truth. Look it up. Maybe you could find it on the internet. It's the truth, and you have to remain centered in the truth. The truth will set you free. And then you need to also maybe take a look at the rune has to do with Orthelia, has to do with inheritance, has to do with family members. What kind of fields have you inherited from your family? Are you in an adaptive field, a healthy field, or did you pick up maladaptive field behavior, system behavior? You know, you need to take a look at that and be honest with yourself. Tell yourself the truth. The Ace of Swords. If you start observing these things and putting your finger on them, then you have the opportunity to walk away from them. Well, I'm gonna wrap this up today. I usually use some sound effects. I'll use some sound effects next week. I just wanted to get something done and get it out there. I hope you all have a good week. And I'm going to talk to you all again next week. I'll post again. And be careful, be cool, be kind. And remember, find courage, have faith. And I will talk to you all again next week. Okay, bye-bye.